Hello girls, gays, and non-binary babes. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Boston. Today we are doing my, what month is it? August wrap up. So my apologies if the lighting is weird in this video. It's currently 30 minutes till sunset, so yeah. Yes, I procrastinated this. Anyway, we're just gonna jump right on into it. I have, I think, 13 books to talk about. So, yeah, overall I had a really good reading month, and I've been reading more than usual, or than I had been the past couple months, so very exciting. I can't wait to talk about all these books, so I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get into it. So the first book that I read in August was For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten. This I borrowed from my library, and it is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood, and it's fantasy, and it's very dark and atmospheric, and I absolutely adored this. I gave it 5 stars. I loved the romance, I loved the setting and the atmospheric writing, and it takes place mostly in a forest, so it's super atmospheric, like I said, and it's perfect for fall. It's just incredible. It reads like a fairy tale. It's amazing, and I really enjoyed this one, so like I said, I give it 5 stars. The next book that I read was an ARC, and that is Medusa. This is by Rosie Hewlett. This is basically the story of Medusa, and it's a little bit different than the original story. I don't really know the full original story, so I can't really attest to that, but it is a little bit different than the original. So I enjoyed this as it was, but I didn't like the writing. So, not necessarily the writing, but I think the voice of the story, so Medusa's telling the story herself, and the voice, her voice sounded way too modern for the book, and it didn't fit. It felt out of place, and it really takes you out of the story, so I didn't really like that. I gave this 3 stars. Overall, I did like the story, but it would have been 5 stars had the voice been like true to, I don't want to say the time period because this is mythology we're talking about, but if it had been a little bit more like the other mythology inspired fiction that people see around, like Song of Achilles, Circe, that kind of thing. So yeah. So I actually have a physical copy for the next one, and the next book I read was a reread, and that was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Like I said, this was a reread. I read this for the first time a few years ago, and I decided to finally reread the story because it is one of my favorites. I do have a tattoo for it. I adore this book, and my reread was no different. I gave it 5 stars. It's just as whimsical and magical and fun. It's just so well written, and I know the main complaint about this is that it drags the first half, and I completely disagree. I am so enthralled the first half. I don't understand how people could not be, but I guess to each their own. But yeah, I won't talk too much about this because everybody and their brother has read it, so yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I do also plan on rereading Muse of Nightmares soon-ish. Hopefully soon. It's probably going to be soonish though. The next book that I read was Beirut, Hellfire Society by Rowie Haig. This is a contemporary fiction story, literary fiction story, and it takes place in Lebanon, in Beirut, Lebanon, and I picked this up because not only does it take place in Lebanon, which is, I'm Lebanese if you didn't know, and I've been wanting to read more fiction from Lebanon and from Lebanese authors, so I picked this up, but it also sounded so intriguing Basically, it's about this guy who takes over his family business of being a, what's the word? He's the son of an undertaker, and so he undertakes that job, and there's a little bit more going on behind the scenes of his dad's job. So in this setting, in this time, yes, it takes place in the 1970s, which was when Beirut was like completely taken over by war, and people are dying all the time, and this kid's dad, who is an undertaker, takes it upon himself to bury the dead that don't normally get a proper grave, so like prostitutes or gay people, stuff of that nature. So of course I had to pick this up. I was so intrigued by that. So I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. I did really like it. I really liked the idea of it, but there were quite a few parts that were just really weird, and it didn't really seem like there was a reason for it. So yeah, I love weird books, but I like weird books when, I don't know, I didn't like this kind of weird, so I gave it 3.5 stars, but it's definitely intriguing, and if you're interested, then feel free to check it out. The next book that I read was actually a nonfiction, and I don't normally rate nonfiction, but I did make an exception for this book. So this book is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and I gave this 5 stars. I broke my rule about not rating nonfiction just because it's nonfiction. It's just nonfiction. But I broke my rules because this was so incredible, and I ate up every word of this book. I listened to the audiobook and I could not get enough of it. I listened to it while I was doing some embroidery, and I got so much embroidery done just because I wanted to listen to the audiobook, which is so wild. But I really cannot recommend this book enough. It talks about our relationship with nature in regards to traditional indigenous, like, I don't want to say like ways of thinking, but their traditional beliefs. And it was so powerful, and I absolutely adored it, and I like I said, I can't recommend it enough. So if you haven't read it, go check it out. It's so incredible, and it was one of my favorite reads of this year, so yeah, really amazing. So next up, we have a book that has been sitting on my TBR for a while, and that is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I bought this when it first came out, planning on reading it as soon as it got to my house. But it's been a few months, and I finally got around to it. But I really like this one too. What can I say? I'm easy to please. It's sapphic. It's got a little bit of sci-fi to it, which I think packs like a little bit of an extra punch, and I really liked that. And I think overall the romance was just cute. Like, it was cute, and it was interesting to see the parallels and the differences between, you know, I think this takes place in the 70s too, between like the 70s queer revolution versus present day queer revolution. It was just very interesting to see, and I really loved that aspect, and it was just incredible. So yeah, I don't think anybody doubted for a second that I would love this book, and of course I did. So yeah. Alright, the next book, I really have no excuse for how and why I read this. So I read A Dowry of Blood by, who's this by? S.T. Gibson. Y'all, if you have been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know I don't read romance. I don't like the traditional contemporary romances that people often gravitate towards. This, however, this I liked. This I gave 5 stars. This was incredible. I actually picked it up because, oh, what's her name? Riley Marie is like my twin when it comes to reading. We love the same things, we hate the same things. So when I saw some recent videos of hers talking about A Dowry of Blood and how it was her new favorite book, I was like, why not? It's romance, but it's also, it's not really a romance. But it's also like fantasy. It has vampires. And it's polyamorous. And it's queer. So, unsurprisingly, I loved it. Unsurprisingly and surprisingly, I loved it. Like I said, it wasn't really a romance. It was more of a, whatever the opposite of a romance is. It's about this woman, and the whole book is her writing these letters to a man, a vampire that turned her into a vampire that she had fallen in love with, and we find out in the very first like paragraph that she has killed him. Really like this one. If you're thinking of checking it out and you don't normally read romance, I'd say go for it, because it's definitely like an outlier. It's not really a romance, so I don't think it counts. Alright, the next book that I read is actually, I can't remember the word. I can never remember this word, but it's a collection of anthology. It's an anthology. Is it? It's a bunch of short stories, but it's by the same author, so I don't know if that's technically an anthology. Anyway, bunch of short stories by Gary A. Braunbeck, and it's called There Comes a Midnight Hour. It's a bunch of horror stories, basically, and I just saw this at my library, thought it looked interesting, and decided to pick it up. So I really liked maybe like the first half of these stories, but the second half I didn't really like at all. I rated this 3 stars because overall I enjoyed it, but the second half just, I don't know. It really had me in the beginning, but then it just tapered off into like, I'm kind of bored now and I don't care. So yeah, unfortunately that happened, but yeah, overall 3 stars. I don't have much to say about that one. And next up, I read Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. This is another Greek mythology retelling. This tells the story of Ariadne, you guessed it, and Ariadne is the sister of the Minotaur and the daughter of, I can't remember, Minos, because Minotaur, Minos? Yeah, that, I am sure. We'll go with that. And it tells her story. And I thought this was mainly going to focus on the Minotaur, but that was like the first third of the book, shockingly. And it really goes on into her relationships and her whole life, basically. It has a very sad ending, as most mythology stories do, so be aware of that. But overall, I adored this, and there aren't many mythology stories that I won't like, so I was not surprised by that. But yeah, just the ending was super sad. But I did give this 5 stars, so it was really amazing. If you're into Circe, Song of Achilles, that stuff, you'll like this one. Same deal, I am into Greek mythology a whole heck of a lot, so I get my hands on any stories I can like that. The next book that I have is also another reread, and that is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and I have not read it in a hot minute. Like, I mean, other than now. I reread this. It was fantastic, as usual, as it was the first time. If you're living under a rock, If We Were Villains is a dark academia, very much like The Secret History, in which 7 friends are going to this elite school, and they, which this differs from The Secret History, they are all theater kids, which makes this sound silly, but it's not. So they're all performing Shakespeare plays, and things quickly go downhill. And there's murder, there's mystery. It's a lot of fun. I adore this book. The plot twist at the very end, oh, incredible. Absolutely incredible. I could make an entire video on how amazing this book is, and I might, so let me know if you want that. But yeah, I adored this. 5 stars. No surprise there. So the next book that I read was another ARC, and that was Flowers for the Sea by Zin E. Rockwell. Racklin, sorry. This is a horror novella, and it's about a woman who is pregnant on this arc of sorts after the world has kind of gone to shit, ended, whatever, and it's kind of a Rosemary's Baby situation where the child she's giving birth to is special, and it's very interesting. I gave this 3 stars. I did like it. Again, I liked the idea of this. However, a lot of it was kind of hard to follow and confusing, at least for me personally, so I couldn't thoroughly enjoy it because I didn't really know what was going on. So yeah, but overall really good, and the reviews of this one seem to be pretty positive, so I might just be an outlier. That's possible. But yeah, 3 stars. So next up we have another dark academia, and that is A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. So this is about a girl going to this, once again, elite school, prep school, and there's a new girl in her class, and the previous year she lost her best friend in an accident, and she's kind of like going through that, grieving still. There's a new girl in school. Things happen. The new girl is a really famous author, and she's writing a new book, and we'll leave it at that. And it's sapphic. It's incredible. I gave it 5 stars. Unsurprising. I adore dark academia, so I am not surprised that I gave this 5 stars. It was one of my most anticipated of the year, and for good reason. It's fantastic. And the final book that I have to talk about is Queen of the Cicadas by V. Castro. So this is a story about an urban legend, the Queen of the Cicadas, and her story in this little Texas town. I gave this 2.5 stars. I thought it was okay. I really liked the horror aspect to it and the thriller aspect. I loved that part. I didn't like the main character. Like, not that I didn't like her, but I thought she was kind of boring, which if you find a main character boring and uninteresting, it kind of dampens the whole book, and this one's pretty short, so yeah, there wasn't a whole lot for me to really enjoy. Also, the last like 30 pages or so seems so unnecessary. I mean, not necessarily unnecessary, but just, I didn't like it. I didn't like the last 30 pages. So yeah, 2.5 stars. I thought it was okay. That's really all I have to say about it. I don't have much to say, so yeah, that's going to be it for my video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you read any of the same books down below, or say hi, say whatever if you want to say anything at all. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.